Hey there everybody and welcome to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com for the latest instalment of Running with the Herd. For those of you new to it, Running with the Herd is our regular series where we look back at the most recent Basingstoke Bison game that we have attended, generally the home games, and this is the most recent one. It's coming a little bit late, we do apologise. A few family bits and pieces got in the way, nothing serious, just the joys of being a new father and needing to go a few different places. But this will be our Running with the Herd to cover the game from Saturday the 14th of October 2017 from the English National Ice Hockey League South Division 1 between the Basingstoke Bison and the Streatham Redhawks. Final score, Basingstoke Bison 5, Streatham Redhawks 2. Goals for the Bison coming from Vanya Antonov, a power play goal for Ashley Jackson, a goal for Thomas Karpov, a short-handed goal for Roman Malinek, and a power play goal from Aaron Connolly. The two goals for the visitors coming in the form of a short-handed goal from Ben Painter and a penalty shot goal from Joe Allen. In terms of where we start with this one for the Bison, this past weekend has all been about keeping momentum going. Now, normally we are writing our pieces on a Sunday morning, so before the upcoming game. But of course, we can talk about this as this is coming out on Monday in the context of what followed on Sunday night, the penalty shot win against Bracknell. And this whole past weekend has been about the Bison keeping up that momentum. The really, really poor loss to Bracknell at home in the Cup, and the response from that. So the Bison are now on a 5-game winning streak in all competitions, back-to-back 4-point weekends, which is really good. And the Bison for this one, there were lapses in concentration. The fact they gave up 2 goals in the space of 2 minutes in the second period in a game that they were dominating was not great. However, there was a lot of positive signs here. The Bison again did what they usually do with Doug Shepherd hockey, which is that they got the lead and they pressed down on the opponent and snuffed them out. It was one of those games really where you do wonder if the Bison had scored a 5th goal before Streatham scored their first, whether they might have pressed on and gotten a lot more. Impossible to say, but it was one of those things. One thing as a Bison fan, a lot of us have been wanting for a very long time is to watch the Herd ratchet up the score, to really, really put teams to the sword, and it's just not Doug Shepherd's style to start putting double figures on teams unless it gets to a point where they really can't help but score, where it's harder to put the puck wide than it is to actually put it in, kind of thing. But very, very professional job by the Herd, job done in the end. The first period was just a horror story for Streatham fans in particular, but just really, really good play from the Bison. They again took advantage of the problems that the other team were having, and just really, really just kept pressing and pressing and pressing, and eventually the other team just didn't have a chance but to capitulate. Kind of exemplified really, really well by Vanya Antonov's goal, and we'll get onto him and Thomas Karpov in a minute, but just one guy fights off the wall, holds everybody off, another one manages to muscle his way in, and a really, really nice goal after what had been wave after wave after wave of pressure, and again, I'm not a massive fan of shots, of shot counts as a really, really big metric. But again, 47-20, the Bison are sometimes out shooting teams by 2 times, 2.5 times. So the puck is definitely getting on the net if nothing else at the moment, which is a marked improvement. In terms of where the Bison keep going from here, I mean, they've got a relatively light schedule. Next weekend they only have the 1 game, and it is away in South London, their first trip for a league game to take on Streatham in a very, very long time before coming home against the Cardiff Fire. So arguably a really, really good chance for the Herd to keep that momentum going. Again, this is really a story of the Bison just making sure those forwards are starting to ratchet up through the gears and things are starting to move slickly and smoothly. The defence again looks really, really good. Dean Skins is an interesting one. With all due respect to Dean, I don't understand how he got man of the match when you consider the efforts of some of the other players on the night. However, the thing with Skins is the defence know how he works. We don't have that many new guys, and the newer guys who hadn't really played with him before in the last couple of years had played with him before anyway, and generally have a good idea as to how he works. Being down Stuart Mogg as well, the bench is significant. The bench on the D is significantly shorter. But the one thing that's actually really, really interesting to see is Joe Baird. Firstly, a multi-point Joe Baird game, which you rarely ever see. And secondly, we're playing with fewer D-men, and Joe Baird, the more ice time he's getting, is looking more and more comfortable and seems to get better. The issue for Joe Baird is that he tires at the end because he's that little bit older than everybody else. But it's really, really funny to watch him, and at the moment, because it's, all the people that were really, really complaining about him the last couple of years kind of having to be kind of a little bit quiet at the moment. Aside from the fact that we're only playing with 4 D-men, Baird's looking really, really good. And you look at the 4 defensemen that the Herd are running at the moment: Reynolds, Scott, Baird, and Dewey. And you throw Mogg into that mix, and actually, we've said it already this season, that defensive 5-man team have been brilliant so far. Elliot Dewey in particular has been fantastic since his return to the Herd. A lot of people, really, really singing his praises. He didn't have the best of times when he first came onto the Bison roster a couple of years ago, but those couple of years at Invicta, boy, has he come on leaps and bounds. And then you throw in people of real quality, like Scott, like Reynolds, someone with the the veteran expertise of Baird, and it's just brilliant at the moment. And then you've got Mork, who's just getting more and more comfortable day by day being a defenseman. So the fact that Dean Skins had a bit of a wobble in this game wasn't the complete end of everything for us. In terms of who should have been man of the match, I think it's actually really, really hard to look outside of our top 2 lines of forwards. I think everybody there sort of staked a claim for it. Josh Smith somehow didn't get man of the match in Bracknell, despite scoring a couple of times in the shootout and scoring 2 goals in the game. And like Dewey, Josh Smith has been a fantastic success story in this Bison roster so far. That's not quite, for some people, really, really hit its stride. I venture, really, you probably give it to either Karpov or Antonov on this particular night. The 2 of them together are just absolutely terrifying to watch. I don't understand why teams from the the NIHL Classic teams, to be called, keep stepping off these 2 guys. But the problem, of course, is that they tried. Streatham did the sensible thing. They tried to be physical. They tried to play the body, and Karpov muscled past them. And Antonov, who's not exactly 6'6", 250 pounds, is breezing past people, knocking them out of the way and scoring. So, what do you do if your team's with these 2? They've not always worked particularly well together in the past, but they're working together really, really well now. With an injury to Grant Randy, we saw Hallam Wilson on that line, and Hallam Wilson, he didn't look super comfortable at times, but I think he's actually in some ways a much more natural fit than Grant Rounding. He's got a bit more of a scorer's touch, so actually those 2 working together, with everybody drawing them to them, the person that's going to leave in space is probably Hallam. And he's a bit of like I say, he's a much more natural goal scorer than Grant. If they can find some trust for whoever they put on that line to put the puck in the back of the net, it's going to be brilliant. Roman Malinek, of course, we do need to talk about. That was his debut. Superb short-handed goal. Exactly the sort of player that the Bison have really, really been missing, which is that old school, out-of-the-box power forward. Short-handed goal on the forecheck, forces the turnover straight to the net. And, we mentioned in our welcome piece about Malinek that he's a bigger body than Chesky. He's a much taller guy by a couple of inches. He's about sort of 15, 20 pounds heavier. And, people just couldn't hold him back. And that's the sort of goal that we're going to need him to score. We can score the pretty goals. Karpov, Antonov. Most of Aaron Connolly's goals this season have been pretty to be perfectly honest. You want people who are going to go into the trenches and do some of the dirty work. And this is the sort of thing that Malinek hopefully is going to be able to do while showing a few flashes of skill. On a line with Josh Smith and Aaron Connolly, literally just stepping straight into the place that Chesky had left. But I think it worked. I think it works for starters. Obviously, it's about winding up and about finding the feet for Malinek. Of course, he's been out of the country. He's been playing in a league that is a higher standard. I don't think we can particularly deny that one, that the Polish top league is better than the NIHL. But it's about adjusting and adapting to the people that you play with. Malinek having the 1 assist on Sunday on the power play goal that Dan Scott scored. So a point a game. He's come in, immediately points on the board. Exactly what we wanted from him in that sense. The story for the Herd at the moment is just to keep pressing on. They got to keep that momentum. Is having only 1 game next weekend going to make that tough? Yes and no. Aaron Connolly has always been of the opinion as Bison captain that the Bison have always been a better side when they are busy. At the moment they're short benched, and actually having 1 game at the moment is probably not the worst of ideas. It's another chance for other guys. to rest up and hopefully be ready for some of the other games that we've got coming up in the not too distant future. I mean, the Bison will certainly fancy their chances away at Streatham and then at home and away to the Cardiff Fire. But then the beginning of November is MK Thunder, and MK Thunder are a team that could either hurt us or we could really, really steamroll them. And hopefully the idea will be that the Bison will have so much momentum that it won't be that teams will start sort of falling in line, and the Bison will start imposing their will on teams a bit more, and that'll be nice to see. As for Streatham, a word on our opponents, as we usually dub it. Streatham is a kind of hockey team I like watching. Obviously, I've got a great amount of respect and affection for Jeremy Cornish as a coach. I think the problem for Streatham was they had a couple of options going forward, but they couldn't. 5-on-5, they struggled to penetrate through the Bison D. They did take some silly penalties as well, which really didn't help their cause. They got unlucky with some, but we'll touch on that a bit more in a bit. It was a lot of hustle and a lot of energy, and they wanted to try and unsettle the Bison. Entirely sensible game plan. It has worked for other teams so far this year. But the problem, I don't think they were necessarily expecting, was just how physical back the Bison can be. I mean, the last time Jeremy Cornish coached against Doug Shepherd, it was in the between the Bison and the Isle of Wight in the old sort of crossover cup a couple of years ago, and that was pretty much a training session. With a much more competitive game. They tried a couple of things, and unfortunately, it just didn't really come off. It seems to be one of those nights at the office that you kind of chalk up as not being your day, and you kind of move on. Definitely quality there. I don't think they're the worst team we've seen by any stretch of the imagination so far. Some very interesting players that we got out of it. Again, not entirely sure how Ryan Watt got man of the match for Streatham for me. Put a solid shift in. Ryan Watt always does, but I think there's a couple of other guys that were probably more deserving. I really liked both Ben Painter and Jacob Ranton. I think and Alex Sanford as well. It was a really, really good third line combination. They just kept running, very, very physical. Trying to take the body, just trying to hassle and hustle and not get goals conceded on them. There's some other really, really decent guys in there. Actually, the one guy who's really picked himself about quite a bit that I thought probably didn't get a lot of plaudits out of this game, Jamie Hayes. Something like doesn't have his name on his back for some reason. But every time I looked up, he seems to be hitting somebody. I can live with that. I think that's pretty good. Having the issue for Streatham was penalty trouble. 55 penalty minutes to the Bison's 8. It's very, very rare the Bison take fewer penalties than anybody these days. But the Streatham were certainly unlucky with a couple of these. Some interesting officiating from Mr. Belfitt. A relatively newer official, certainly for people in Basingstoke. I can't comment as to how often he's been seen by Streatham fans. But some very, very interesting calls. Some that were very, very harsh on the on Streatham. A couple of there was a couple of holding. There was at least one sort of tripping call that was definitely not a trip. But then again, I don't think that the penalty that was called for the penalty shot that Streatham got was a penalty. It's something like this gone down as a hook. It was never a hook if it was anything. It was a massive slash. But the guy managed to get something on a shot and is skating away from there. He wasn't skating towards Dean Skin, so I don't know how that's a penalty shot. Much more impressive was Josh Smith getting 2 for elbows. Entirely legitimate. It was a massive elbow. But how you get 2+2 for fighting when you don't drop your gloves, have your shirt pulled over your head, and you get punched? Don't really get that one. I'll have to leave that one into the lap of the gods, unless Mr. Belfitt wishes to come on to Banners on the Wall and can explain it and can explain that particular call for us. We'd all love to hear that. Another big one for Streatham, of course, match penalty for Jordan Gregory for slew footing. Not good at all. Didn't see the incident myself, so I'm not going to comment on that. But it's never great to have to lose a guy. Jordan Gregory again, not a lot of effort, if not a lot of massive amount of output. Then to round off, we always do a low light of the night and a highlight of the night. Low light of the night, short-handed goal. Never want to give up a short-handed goal, but a very, very sweet shot by Ben Painter to find the bottom corner in off the post for it, so you can't fault him on that one. Highlight of the night has to be Karpov's goal. So much space, but just very, very pretty. Antonov to Baird, blue line shot, tip off the floor, up over the shoulder, goal, happy time, celebrate, we are done, we are gone. So that's that one. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us. If you don't normally do these things, what we do for next weekend, I don't really know. Whether I'm able to make it to Streatham to cover the Bison's game there is undecided as of yet. We may just have a complete week off. We might do some other bits and pieces. There is a podcast. The next episode of the BOTW podcast is due out this coming Friday, where we cover the news, action and views from the NIHL, as well as all levels above, below and in between. We've had some really good guests this year. Going to try and get something lined up for this weekend as well, so hopefully you will join us for that. Either way, thank you very much for joining us for this particularly special audio edition of Running with the Herd. We will leave that with you. As my friend Scotty Will says, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time.